The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The DrStem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The DrStem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
As you know, today's teenagers, they are going through a lot of struggles at home, school, as well as in the community. Today's guest has extensive history in the school system, and he's going to help us with some of the things that he has used in the past that has worked to turn around the teenagers, to help the parents as well as the teachers. We have as our guest, Mr. Charles B. Walsh. Welcome to the show, Mr.
Thank you very much.
And welcome to the DrStem Show. I am so excited that you're here with us today. As I said earlier before the cameras start rolling, it's always an honor when we can have someone who's been in the school system 32 plus years. Yeah, so what I want to do is just to have you tell us a little bit about your background so the audience can know, who we have on the set today.
Well, my father was the truant officer of Salem for 30 years, and I learned from him that you always treat people with kindness. Yeah. In fact, he had a statement, kindness is the word, and it's on my gravestone already. So kindness really does a lot. For instance, when my dad was working as a truant officer, he had a unique way of handling kids who were truants, who were having a hard time in school, especially teenagers, and especially in the high school. Yes. But what he did was, if they were not in school, he went to the house, talked to the parent, and then he found out where the kid was. Over the years, he knew where they all went. There were certain places they would go in the old Howard in Boston, or the girls were hiding up in the cemetery, or whatever it would be. But anyway, what he did was he would take them, whether they were Jewish or whether they were Catholic or Protestant. Yes. He took them to St. Joe's Church, had them go to communion, and then he brought them to our house, and we had breakfast with them. And now while we're eating breakfast, my dad would say, "Gee, Ben, you've got a nice pair of sneakers on." He said, "Johnny doesn't have any sneakers." I said, "Well," he says, "Well, see if they fit." So they tried the sneakers on. If they fit, he said, "That's good. You got Sunday shoes to wear anyway, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, no problem."
So he gave up your own?
So yeah, I'd give him my sneakers, and so whatever my father wanted.
Yeah.
But then he would take them out for coffee. Yeah. And he said, "Now listen, why are you skipping school? You don't really need to. You want to go to school," and so forth. And the kids would go. The real tough guys, take them down the basement, put on the gloves. My father was a professional boxer. And they would box. And the kid would put on the gloves, thinking, now how big they were. Some of them were big kids. Yeah. They were going to take care of him. Well, bang, he hit him one shot, and the kid drops. And he says, "You want to get up? Because if you do, you're going to hit again." Bang. Kid gets down. He says, "I learned a lesson, Mr. Walsh." He says, "I think I'm going to go to school." Yes. Then he'd take him out for coffee and donuts, bring him up to the high school and say to the principal, he just needed a little time. And the principal would take him back because he knew my father had already disciplined him. Of course, if he did it today, he'd be in jail. Yeah. But at least at that time, there were policemen, firemen, and so forth that became, great men. Yes. And that's all he needed was a little lesson. So.
Wow, so I hope the truant officers are listening out there, because I think that kindness that you're talking about of treating them as human and giving them that love, support, and then you talk to them about going to school.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah. It transfers right to them.
Yes.
And they'll talk to you.
Yes.
It's not easy to get a teenager to talk. Yeah. And if you say, "Well, what did you do?" Yeah. They're not going to, they'll say nothing. But if you say to them, "Well, John, if it was my case, I think I would have done this," then it opens up something for them to talk about. Yes. The other thing is, I have 7 brothers and sisters, 3 of whom were passed on. But in the house, we have probably, I think, 14 degrees of different types. My father, at 81, got a second master's degree. So you never had an excuse for not studying.
81 years old.
But I'll tell you, the best 32 years of my life, or 36 years of my life, was being a teacher, principal. There's nothing like it.
So was that here in the Salem area where you
Yeah,
were
they were all in the Salem area. I started at Ipswich High School,
Okay.
but I was only there a half a year, and this opened up in Salem, so I came right to Salem. And it's been a wonderful experience.
But before you became a teacher, I read in your bio here where you went to seminary school.
Oh, yeah.
How was that? Just briefly.
Well, for a man who likes to talk, it was not easy.
Right?
As you know, the Carmelite order of priest, and I was in the Irish province, by the way, which is in New York, and they take care of the big hospital in New York as chaplains, and also they teach in many high schools throughout the United States. But it was an experience that I really enjoyed. I had 65 of us in the class.
Yes.
And of the 65, to show you how they thin it out, only 8 became priests. So it becomes, you know, a thinning out as you go along, gets more difficult and so forth. But poverty, chastity, and obedience takes a lot of ability to put together and live by. However, apparently God said, look at Charlie, I want you as a teacher or something. So I left the seminary and I went into the Air Force. And I no sooner got to the Air Force than they sent me to Yale University to learn Chinese language and code systems. Yes. So I became a cryptanalyst, and then I was sent over to Korea and Japan and Philippines and Formosa and so forth. And I enjoyed teaching, you know, some of the people. And we broke Chinese Civil Air Code, which was quite an achievement, so we enjoyed that too.
Yeah. So just to put it in context, what year was that you taught in high school? That was middle school, 7th and 8th grade.
Well, when I taught high school, that was my first year, 1960.
1960. So
And
we're
I graduated
talking.
in 60. Yeah.
We're talking about 1960.
Yeah.
Back in the 1960. Okay.
Yeah,
And then you
yeah.
became principal 2 years later in 1962.
4 years later.
4 years later in 1964.
Yeah.
And you did that for 32
2 years.
years.
I retired in 1996.
Yes.
And upon retirement, I found, oh, geez, I can't do things. So I said, listen, I went down and I joined the AARP.
Yes.
And 2 or 3 years later, they made me president. And I still have the job. They're supposed to change every 2 years.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then I came here, and there was a different director at that time. And he said, yeah, Charlie, why don't you come in and learn it? So I learned the different things here. And it was great. I really enjoyed it, meet the people. And upon that time, 2 years later, I became, let's see, I think it was 3 years later, I became the chairperson of the board of directors of SATV, and I've been there ever since.
And you know, my apologies for not mentioning that that you are the chair of the board, which I'm also now a member of the board for this TV station, which is Salem Access Television.
That's
that is
right.
where we record the DrStem show. So what I wanted to ask you as well, because I think the teenagers today, you know, are going through a lot.
Yeah,
but then I'm told by some parents that it's no different than what I went through when I was a teenager. Now, you have experience in the 1960s. Do you see a difference with what they're going through and what you saw in the schools?
Well, there were 3 or 4 differences that I noticed.
Okay.
One is the family doesn't eat like it used to. In other words, we used to go to breakfast, and we would discuss politics or whatever it might be around the table. And there were 12 of us around the table all the time. And we found that to be good. Kind of woke you up in the morning. And then upon that, you know, when you're, we ate at school for lunch. But at nighttime, you know, we got together and my mother had a big meal and so forth. And everybody could express what was happening today and so forth and so on. So I kind of kept everybody in touch with everybody. And of course, there was fighting about who was going to do the dishes and who was going to do the wiping, and it's a typical family type of stuff, right?
Yes.
And of course, at that time, there was only one bathroom. They all had to line up, you know. You had to heat the water on the stove, you know.
Yeah, that's
but they don't have to do that today.
Yes.
So there are some things today that have changed and other things that haven't.
Yes.
But in regard to the teenagers, they have so much thrown at them, you know, between the media, which has taken over their lives. And it used to be we would have radio, and you listen to the radio, and you really had to listen because you imagined what was happening.
Yeah.
You really used imagination.
Yes.
And I can think, you know, Captain Midnight and The Secret Door and all this stuff. all those crazy, you can't help but remember them.
Yeah.
So today, it's presented in real life almost, and it doesn't have that thing where you have to really think about it. It's all thought ahead for you.
Yeah.
You just try to guess who's going to kill who or what, you know. So it's a different way to look at it. Also, the peer group thing is a lot more difficult, I think, because, again, they're torn so many ways. Will they go take drugs? Will this peer group allow them into it? Will this clique ever take care of the child who's kind of a loner? And those kind of things are what really bothers me. Yeah. To see a little girl left alone because maybe she smells or maybe she is unkempt, and yet, you know, she's dying to have somebody say, Alice, would you let me, you know, and the girl will say, no, you're not, you know. So that really bothered me. That's why I spent a lot of time trying to say, look, Alice only wants to be kind. And kindness is the word. Yeah. Can you do that? Yeah. Are you got enough strength to do that, to break that? No, Mr. Walsh, let me think about it. I said, oh, you can think about it. Sure, I appreciate the fact that you're thinking about it. Yeah. But she needs that. You don't. You're already part of something. Yeah. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't, yeah. So do you think we have more at-risk youth and teenagers today than they were in the 60s?
I think so.
You think so?
More at risk, no question about it, because the automobile is another thing. You know, you formerly had them around. They could take a bicycle and go a place, but you didn't have so many teenagers owning cars. I mean, half the lot at St. Home High School is the young teenagers. 16, they get their license right away.
You're right.
And when you have a car, a lot of strange things happen.
Problems.
Yeah.
We are here today talking to Charlie Walsh, who was principal for 32 years, and we're talking about some of the solutions that we can implement today that were implemented in the 1960s. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Teenagers, parents, and teachers, those are the problems that we're facing today of how we can bridge that communication gap that is between them. And we have here today Charlie, who's helping us with that. We were talking about whether you thought there was a higher number of truant kids today than it was in the 1960s, and you just say to me, yes, you think that they were, you know, I mean, more truant teenagers today. What is it that is making them not want school, you know, and not want an education for themselves?
Well,
you think?
There are probably 2 or 3 good reasons. One of them is that when my father was doing it in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the kids had to toe the line a little bit more, I think, because the family was really the family. They weren't working 2 or 3 jobs. And that really today has affected so many of the kids because the parents are leaving early in the morning, then the kids leave, and then the father might have a night job, so he leaves and so forth. But really, that's no excuse, because I felt when I was a principal and I started having children that I would make my wife stay home. And she was a home mother, and she raised those kids. And I provided the income and so forth. But unfortunately, that's not the way it is today. And it is for some people, but for a lot of people it isn't, because, you know, the wages haven't changed. They haven't gone up. So as a result, the kids may have cars, but they got to have money to buy the gasoline today. They have to have money to buy the things and buy all the toys that the advertising has really caused the big thing, because the kids eat it up. They order, you know, they got the credit card, which is another thing, and a debit card. And as a result of that, the bills build up, and it's very hard to take a card away once they have it.
Let alone the cell phone.
Yeah.
The
you know,
cell phone is costing them a lot of money.
So for the parents to take things away like that is very difficult once you let them have it. And some of them have it at the first grade.
Yes.
So that's one of the things. But the other thing is, you know, the idea of work is not the same. They don't want to do a lot of the jobs. Like, we used to cut grass and all that kind of stuff. But the kids feel as though that's this, you know, that's a slave's job or something. I don't know what it is, but they have a totally different idea of what they should do as a teenager and so forth. And I suppose in that case we blame the parents. You know, they should say to them, look, you earn the money, I'll put it in the bank, save it for you, or I'll let you have so much. And when I was a kid, I gave my mother my whole check. I wasn't about to ask her for any money, but she'd give me a quarter to go to the store, like something like that. Those were different days.
Yeah, but then, I mean, you know, talking about different days, the other thing is a lot of the parents that I've spoken to are actually afraid of these teenagers because then, you know, if they don't, you know, follow through with, you know, whatever the mother or father is asking for, there's nothing else you can do. Do you think that the system and the law that we have here that you can spank a kid or, you know, to pinch a kid, that maybe it also helps into...
You know, they'll like, for it, I can give you, for instance, is the teachers are afraid if they put their arm like that, the kid knows enough to call,
DCF.
They tell you that. As I'll give you an example. My grandson, so help me God, he told somebody that his father tied him up down the basement with a chain. And of course, the teacher said, wow, this is, you know, and so... They decided to go visit the house because they had a report. In the meantime, I had happened to go by the house. And I walk in and this woman says, Charlie Walsh? I said, yeah, what are you doing here? She says, we got a report about Charles being chained to the basement. I said, what? Where did he get that from? So his father called him down. He said, Charles, Grampy's here. Oh, gee. I said, Charles, when did your father ever tie you up? He said, oh, I was kidding, Grampy. I said, well, let me tell you what's happened now. Because you did that, you now are listed in the state as a person who was mistreated by the parents. And those parents have to sign a sheet. So he learned a lesson from it, but I was ready to kill him, honest to God. I said, why would you do that? And I knew all these people because I dealt with them every day. So sometimes they do foolish things.
Because then, you know, I mean, so it leaves the parents, though, the ones that really need some form of discipline, helpless. And, you know, I know they have programs now that have been put in place.
They do. They have a lot of programs.
Which is a great thing.
That
you can actually call DCF and they'll be able to help, you know, with putting
Of course, you got to realize, a lot of these immigrants are coming in. Some of them have never been to school. And the hardest ones are the teenagers in the high school. They get up to high school, well, you can't start them at the first grade. And so they got to learn fast, which is not an easy task, especially when the parents don't speak any English. That makes it even more difficult because they're thinking in Spanish, they're talking English. It takes time for the brain to do this. And in many cases in Salem, that's probably why we have a problem at a school which is level 4, because it's mainly immigrant children down there and very poor. Very poor. And we have a special charity called Salem Children's Charity that we started, or I started with some people. And we provide every principal with so much money to try to take, you know, underwear if the kids need underwear, if they need clothes, if they need food, if they need whatever it might be. Like this thing in Dow Street, I forget how much, about $3,500 we gave them for the kids. Strictly for the kids. And this is what we do with the money. We have a fundraiser every year. So that helps a little bit. At least the people know they can contact the school. But there are, you know, this is the biggest problem in Salem is the fact that we have a huge population that doesn't speak English, and some of the parents don't speak English, and some of them, I think most of them want to learn English because they do teach down at the Point classes all the time. But the ones who you know, just are not interested in learning English, it makes it very difficult for the kids. You know, because they want to talk to their parents and they only speak Spanish, and yet they know they have to use English, although they do test them in Spanish, but sometimes they don't have that great a background in Spanish. So it really makes a very difficult situation. The teaching, I gotta praise those teachers for doing it because they've been working hard. And now it's going to be a whole new setup, which is really tearing them apart.
That's true.
It really is a difficult
situation. It's always that
situation.
change and adjustment. The other problem that we also see the parents struggling with, or you know, the school struggling with, is parents attending meetings at the school or the parent-teacher meetings. That, you know, most of the parents don't come. Any ideas, suggestions?
Well, again, in so many cases,
we can help them?
they're both working. You know, she's working as cleaner or, you know, in some place. She might be working 2 or 3 jobs. Yeah. And the husband's out there trying to find a job too. It's not easy when you're an immigrant. Yeah. And especially if you're an illegal immigrant. Yeah. You know, that becomes a nightmare for people. Yes. But I hope that somehow or other we'll be able to do it. I mean, I found people coming from other countries were dying to learn English, especially Vietnamese. They wanted English right away, the parents. And when I talk to most parents, they want to do it, you know, but it's hard to fit the schedule.
Yeah, it's hard. You know what, Mr. Charlie, I'm enjoying the conversation. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back. You know what? We are back on camera now, and I know you were telling me a story that I said, no, wait. I want to hear it on camera. So tell us about this story about kids being truant.
Well, it seems as though these children, teenagers from Salem High School, and they decided they were going to play hooky. Well, my father happened to get their names, and he knew the mother. Yes. So he went to up to where the boys were. Yes. And he saw them, Brown's Pond, Peabody. And he saw all their clothes packed up in stacks along the side. So he went over very quietly, picked up all the clothes, put it in the car, went back to their house, and gave them to the mother and said, here, put these on their bed and lay them out at the way they were in the morning. She says, well, she says, Mr. Walsh, you know, why would they do that? He says, because they didn't want to go to school, but they're going to learn a lesson. So he went back up there, and he parked up there, and he watched them. Finally, they got tired of swimming and so forth. They wanted to get back home because it was getting time when school gets out. Now they got to figure out a way to get back without any clothes. So what did they do? They took the reeds that grew around the edge of the pond, and they kind of wove them together, and they strapped them around each other. So they show up at the house, and the mother says, oh, she says, that's a funny garment. You didn't leave that one on when you left here for school. They said, oh, Ma, we were in a play up at the high school, and we had a play, we were the parts of the Indians and the Reeds. She says, oh, that's nice. She says, why don't you go upstairs and change? And they said, well, okay, Ma. They race upstairs. All of a sudden, there's dead silence. There's their clothes on the bed. So they come down. She's waiting with the broom down the stairs. And she said, what about it, she says. That was quite a show, wasn't it? And they said, well, you know, well, I guess it's whap. I guess they never went back to Brown's Pond.
No, I don't think they did. And you know what? I love that story because, as you know, my second office is at Salem High School.
Oh, yeah.
So then these kids were from Salem High School. So these kids were Salem High School. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, and what it is I wish they understood that when you're skipping school, you're not punishing anybody else
but
except yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're not going to get the education that you need. And that gets us to the homework and doing work in class. Was that a problem?
Two things that I find the most troubling for teenage is writing book reports and doing homework. Yes. Now, book reports, the way I take care of it is I said, look, the reason you would do a book report now is when you get on in life, you're going to have to report on many things. Yes. You're going to have to learn, first of all, the vocabulary, then the grammar, and then how to present it and so forth. They said, well, Mr. Walsh, you know, I really don't like that book. I said, well, if the teacher assigns everybody the same book, there's not much you can do. But there are ways to do it. Now, some of you may be speed readers. It's the people who have a very difficult time and have to like read word to word to understand the book. But I said, you can quick read it and pick out things that you like and then just, you know, do certain things. So you know what the status is, what the actors are, what the whole idea behind the story is. I said, and when it comes to homework really is work that you've already done. So they're checking to make sure you understand it. And of course, nowadays, it's very easy because the teachers go right to the internet. They put the thing on the internet, so the kids, if a kid says, well, I forgot my homework, Mom, she knows enough, go to the internet. Yeah. Dial in Salem High. Yes. Dial in your teacher, and it's right there.
they still cannot connect the importance of homework.
Yeah,
They
I know,
still are
yeah.
not doing it.
In some cases,
Yeah.
I often wonder if homework isn't a waste of time. If they said to the kid, okay, I want you to go home now and dream up your own problem. And give me a case of why this should work, or what it might do, or how you do it a different way. Maybe I'm going to learn something if you teach it a different way. And I know now they teach math in all kinds of different ways.
Yes, they do.
And you make it a happy thing. You know, in fact, I was reading about teenage, and also in a college in Ontario, they have a special setup for homework for kids to do it in the school, like they do at the Boy and Girls Club now.
Yes.
They really get the kids to learn how to do homework, because when a kid comes in there, they know he has the homework. It has to be done before he can play, which is a very good idea.
Yes.
You know, it shouldn't be a chore.
Yeah.
It should be something that, wow, I'm learning more here. You know, they can go to the internet.
Yeah, the day is long already. They're starting
It is.
school about 7:20.
And now they want to add another hour.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know. Yeah.
it is. It's very difficult.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
it's a long day, and the mind, the brain
Yeah.
can only take so much.
Yeah, it
so
is.
by the time they get home, they're exhausted, and
You
they
know,
want to watch TV.
They forget
wanna
about
play.
that. You got to give kids breaks during the day too. You got to let them have a little recess here and there, especially the young ones,
Yes.
because it's extremely difficult to hold the attention. And same with the teacher.
Yeah.
You know, you're using your brain all the time,
Yeah.
and you got 28 little kids in front of you. It's not an easy task.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, there's so much to talk about, but I don't want to forget this part here. I was talking to my sisters, they're all parents, I don't have children
Yeah.
yet. So they were talking about the homework that's, the kids are bringing in,
Yeah.
and how hard it is for them to sit down and do it
Yeah.
with the children, because they don't understand
That's
the work.
true. That's
I
another
don't
problem.
understand. I have a doctorate degree.
Yeah.
I don't understand the work that they're bringing in 7th grade and 8th grade, some of it.
I know.
How can we
The
help
calculus
resolve
is what
it?
gets parents. you
Yeah.
know?
So how can we help these parents that don't know?
Yeah.
So this
Well-
kid is not doing homework because nobody knows at
There
home to
is
help.
there is a way now.
Okay.
There's this man who's a multimillionaire, and he's Indian, I believe.
Okay.
And he has a program on TV in which you can start at kindergarten through the highest level of college,
Okay.
learning how to do math. And you can practice and practice and practice, and if you don't get it, you can call him. And it's called, oh God, Han University,
Well,
HAND or something like that.
Okay,
I'll
I'll
get it for
research
you.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on it, and it's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, because they run through exactly how you do the problem,
Yes.
and they show you how to do a word problem, and then you practice the word problem, and then you send them the results, and they say to you, well, this is what you're missing. You have to do this, this. So it's been, I think, a big help to parents.
Oh,
And-
great.
And vocabulary, you know a good way to learn vocabulary? The Reader's Digest.
Reader's Digest.
Reader's Digest always has one page with 10 or 12 words.
That's true.
It gives you the word, it gives you the correct spelling of it, and also the definition of it. So that, and my father always played it, a word a day keeps the doctor away.
A word a day keeps the doctor away, just like a fruit a day,
Yep.
an apple a day, I
Yeah.
think it is. Mr. Walsh,
You're right on the ball.
Charlie, thank you so much.
This has
was-
been a wonderful experience. really.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Thank
I
you
could
so
go on
much.
for another 6 hours if you
I
want.
know. So what we're going to do is invite you back again, because we can always do this again.
Well, what I'd like you to do is have my brother come in.
Yes, we'll do
You'll
that.
enjoy my brother.
Excellent.
He'll probably tell you my brother's a blowhard or something, but anyway.
So thank you so much for coming today, and I will be inviting your brother
you.
once again. Thank you for watching the Dr. STEM show.
And I hope all the Salem teachers keep their jobs, do a stupendous job. You do work very hard, very hard. Keep it up.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. They needed that. Thank you.